This video was brought to you by my wonderful patrons such as Eve, Atticus Belmont, Dreaded Cypher, Timothy Reviews, and Alex the Azeroth. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support the channel, consider sharing the videos around and supporting my Patreon. Now on to the main event! Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger is the 45th Super Sentai season, and it's another anniversary season, but instead of bringing back past characters like Gokaiger did, the anniversary elements would be more so celebrated in the themes and aesthetics of the show, like with the four main robotic rangers known as the Kikinoids being inspired from mecha of Sentai's past, or Zenkaiger being a combination of the Go Rangers and Big One from Jacker. But that's not the only unique quality Zenkaiger has going for it, as it's also really funny. Zenkaiger's humor is best described as hanging off the boys at 3 AM, cracked up on drugs, and seeing the face of God who's also chilling with you. That might be a gross exaggeration, but it does get pretty wacky, with different humorous roll calls every episode, to casually poking at Sentai tropes without outright mocking them, and just a general sense of, this is kind of insane, but I'm having too much fun with friends that I don't really care. Granted, I've seen people really dislike Zenkaiger's humor, especially when they do comedic homages to other Sentai, and to be honest, I don't want to hang out with those guys. Jabs aside, humor is subjective, and a large part of your enjoyment of Zenkaiger is going to be focused on whether or not you find it funny, because more so than other Sentai, the plot is very non-existent. Sure, Sentai is a mostly episodic franchise, but most shows usually have a plot that progresses in the background, but Zenkaiger is more focused on having a fun time and building likable characters over being story-focused, which is fine by me, and the little story we do get is really good, but it does make me wish it had a tiny bit more story. As for the villains, they really don't do much, minus Stacy, the villainous rival ranger of the show, and while I do think his arc could have ended sooner than it did, he's still a very cool character who has some really wholesome development throughout the show as he starts to love humanity through his interactions with Kaito's granny. As for the main team that makes up the Zenkaigers, we have Kaito, the likable leader who can rally the troops, Juran, the oldest of the bunch who loves to party but still has many words of wisdom to share, Gaon, who loves everything about organic life, Majin, the shy yet passionate magic lady, and Vroom, who loves to consume knowledge. While they don't have the most complex of arcs outside of their introductions and a couple of key episodes, these guys are still a super fun yet chaotic bunch. I think what makes them consistently entertaining is that their strong personalities adapt and change depending on what plot of the week they're thrown. And then we have my favorite character of Zenkaiger, and one of my favorite characters in Sentai period, Zox, aka 2 Kaiser. So this dude shows up near the end of episode 8, unannounced in the middle of Kaito and Stacy's fight, sings about how cool he is, dances to transform, and fights in a super show-offy way. This is one of the best hero debuts I have ever seen, and it's less than 5 minutes. My only problem with the introduction is that he was introduced way too early in the show at episode 8, when he could have been introduced around episode 12 or 13. But even with that misstep, Zox manages to be a really entertaining character who still lets the core 5 Zenkaigers shine. As a character, Zox is super flashy, often singing about how he's going to defeat his enemies, though he is a marvelous prick to the Zenkaigers, preferring to operate separately from them, but that doesn't mean he'll still work with them when the time calls for it. Zox is also a wholesome family guy, as he works with his siblings to fight and make new power-ups for him. Speaking of that, I love the in-universe explanation of why he looks like a Gokaiger. It's just because his sister Flit just stole the design because it looked cool, and it's pretty funny how the pirate Sentai that use other teams' suits had their own designs pirated. Zox is a wonderful tribute to Gokaiger, but still has enough of his own quirks and flair to make him stand out as my favorite 6 Ranger in Sentai. And outside of the humor, that's ultimately Zenkaiger's biggest strength, using references and tropes from past Sentai shows and adding on or tweaking them to make something new while still respecting the past of Sentai. While it may not be the best story Sentai has told, it's certainly one of the funniest Sentai seasons, and I highly recommend giving it a watch.